Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burnettwork. Welcome to Positive Fandom. I'm RM. Tonight we have with us Catherine Cooke. Catherine, how are you tonight?
Very good. Thank you.
This is our spoiler review of Ahsoka Season 1, Episode 3 and 4 review. Dinner and a movie version because we are snacking as we are enjoying our meals. And there is just so much to talk about these two episodes, 3 and 4, Catherine, that I can't stop thinking about these episodes. And I was wanting something to hook me into the series. And, I think it's very interesting how this series is played out. We've gotten something so remarkable. There's so much to talk about. We're going to start with episode 3. And, I think it is really interesting that it starts off where we see Sabine practicing. She's decided to kind of come on board now. She has her armor with her, but she wants to practice these stances as a Jedi and learn different forms. It's a lot of work. She'd already heard from Huang that, she wasn't the best Jedi during her training before, but she wants to get back in the saddle. And, so many scenes in this particular sequence are reminiscent of what we've seen in the past of former Jedi. What did you think of it, Catherine?
Yeah. Sabine finally, there's still a, missing story there in terms of like how long exactly was Ahsoka trying to train her and why exactly did Ahsoka stop doing that? Because the resentment is clearly still there. And I like the bit where Huang is being critical by saying, oh, she's not really Jedi material. She's not going to measure up to the Jedi Order. And Ahsoka's like, well, the Jedi Order didn't measure up to itself because it failed. It failed. So what does it matter? She's good enough, and you know it. And he's just kind of like, just kind of like that about it. So seeing her get into training, and it's like, okay, we're moving it along, but there's still kind of those lingering questions of what exactly happened, before.
There are a lot of questions, and I think what's interesting is that we are so curious about what hasn't been said, because it feels like such a mystery to unravel this. And I guess there is some truth. And I had to kind of approach the notion of why we may not be hearing too much is because Ahsoka is a Force user. And, I think that in her mind, the way she thinks and the way that maybe a lot of Force users are is that they maybe aren't going to talk very much. They're not going to communicate. For some period of time, she was hiding her powers in her lifetime. And, we saw that during, I think, season 7 of the Clone Wars, when she came up, next to the sisters, and she was very careful not to let them know that she had abilities like this. And there was this, kind of where people didn't care for Force users or Jedi in general. So I think it is very interesting that, they're going to communicate differently, and trying to kind of understand the psychology of a person who's either a Jedi, a former Jedi, current Force user is very interesting. How do they function in society? And what exactly do they let people know? Now, Ahsoka is legendary at this point. She's a legendary status. She's famous throughout the galaxy, right?
Maybe, because, during the Clone Wars, she was with Anakin a lot. So people who would know Anakin, maybe they might know, but then again, not really, because in the timeline, that was like 25, almost 30 years ago now. Because as far as most of the people in the galaxy know, like 99.99999%, Anakin died in Order 66, like everybody else. They didn't know that he became Darth Vader and all that. So Ahsoka also being, in the shadows a lot of the times, they never really explained in the Rebel series how she became Fulcrum and what she was doing between the end of Clone Wars Season 7 and her showing up in Rebels as the secret Rebel sect leader. So it is unclear how many people know about her per se, but guys like we see Baylan Skoll know of her because Anakin would brag about her, which is not surprising. But she also, she likes to proudly say, "I am no Jedi," which is kind of like a little irony, because actually she is the ideal Jedi in every way. But she'll just go about saying that anyhow, and I don't picture that she would be like showing off as much, like a lot, not so much out of shame, but just because it's, effective or useful. You don't really need to flaunt it, so to speak. So it is questionable how many know her.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Absolutely. And, this is something that, let's say even at this point, it's something that needs to be figured out in a sense of trying to figure out how these Force users are perceived, because they are so different from everyone else. They're not like the other people who are around at this time. And, I think certainly the other side, let's say Elspeth and Boylan and Hottie, they definitely know that they have the advantage of being together, all, three of them, Force users or believers or users of the Force. And I think that they have quite a unified front, Catherine, that is very unique. Ahsoka doesn't really have that. What other Force user could she call upon? And so I think it is very interesting, of course, when we talk about the end of episode 4, to kind of touch on that again. But Hera, comes into play, and she's trying to plead with the council. Once again, we do see this theme play out over and over again, where they just can't be bothered, and I think Mon Mothma being there is very interesting, because we know that she does actually care. Her heart is in, keeping the Republic alive. She believes in this full on. So, and we also know that she's doing different things. What did you think about her saying that? What did you think she spoke to them about when she says, "I'm going to speak to the council separately"? What is she asking them or telling them, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know, because it seems bizarre that she didn't just put her foot down in that meeting, because, like, Hera laid out a very sound case. That you had a high-profile prisoner who was broken out in a very violent manner. They've taken off to the shipyards, which had Imperial loyalist infiltrators. They built a hyperspace ring, and they're taking off because they believe that Thrawn is still out there, whether the information is valid or not. These are still criminals who, murdered a bunch of people on a major Republic transport, and you just don't even care to investigate. And Mon Mothma doesn't really say anything when the other senator's trying to, brush it off, which I thought was odd. It's like, why talk to them separately? Why don't you put her foot down? Like, how much is it really going to cost you to send out, like, one small starship? Like, as we'll see in the 4th episode, when Hera does take off with the Ghost and a few X-Wings. Like, would that really have killed them, the Rebel Council? And we've seen from the Andor series how Mon Mothma is very effective at covertly being able to get things done. And yet now that we're in the New Republic era, where she has the authority to actually let her voice be heard and say, this is what we should do, and she just mostly stood by silently doing nothing at that meeting. So I thought that was really bizarre.
It did seem odd and out of place. She almost seemed shocked by, how she was going to handle this. And certainly that would have been something that I think would have come up in conversation by now, or at least for part of her group, as to how they could control or handle potential threats. But it does seem like it's falling on deaf ears, as, we learned that Hera has to kind of, go off on her own, if you will, and say, I'm just going, and I don't care what you guys say. And some people are like, yeah, okay, we'll give you a little bit of support. But it was not necessarily satisfying to see her have to go off on her own, and I guess, not have the support that we would expect for a general to have, going forward. So that was very interesting dynamic. The other thing too was when Sabine and Ahsoka are approaching, they were successful. Chompers was successful in placing that beacon, that homing beacon. And certainly, they're on this planet where obviously Hellspeth and Boylan and Hadi are on. And so they're approaching the planet, and there's, they have to kind of fight to get their way in through the atmosphere so they can land. And Ahsoka is like coaching Sabine, and Sabine isn't appreciating it. She's like, this isn't the time for training. And I'm thinking to myself, well, yeah, you do need these sort of real life experiences for training. Was that a foreshadowing of the fact of what we might see later on with her behavior towards Ahsoka, giving her advice of how to concentrate and handle stressful situations?
Most likely, especially when Wong will later say, can I make one request of both of you? Just stay together, And so yeah, that's kind of what's going on there, and you could tell that they were also counting on Hero to show up because they assumed that it was going to be a given that Mon Mothma was going to approve, reinforcements, and so they were very surprised to find out that wasn't going to happen. But because time is of the essence, they couldn't really afford to, pull back and wait. So in they go, and Sabine, already somebody who's needs. I mean, and this is one of the issues I have with the series so far is that Sabine is not really acting in a way that's consistent with the way she is in Rebels because she would be mature enough to set her issues with Ahsoka aside to focus on the mission. Like even in the first episode where she's like, no, I'm going to take the map back to Ezra's place. Like, no, she would just read it right there. And as we see in the fourth episode, she does something else, which is completely out of character for her. So maybe they're just writing that stuff to try and add unnecessary friction to keep people interested. I don't know. I just thought it was a bit out of character that she'd be even fussing about this type of stuff. But here we are.
Yeah, and what were the Purgles doing there, Catherine? I mean, it's not that I'm shocked to see Purgles anywhere. It's just that we haven't seen them in a lot of, planets or places. And out of nowhere, as they're landing, you see these beautiful space whales floating in the atmosphere. And I wondered to myself, are they necessary to even, what is their role just at this very moment? And, Sabine is quite shaken when she sees them. They're magnificent creatures, but why do we see them right now?
Well, as we find out, the map is based on ancient, and the ones that the Jedi used to use were based on ancient hyperspace lanes charted by the Purgle, which I'm not really a fan of the idea that Purgle can just jump to hyperspace. It's really weird even for Star Wars, but I guess much like when the Purgle were first introduced in Rebels, they were living on a planet or in the lower atmospheres of a planet, and that's where Ezra kind of met them. And because of Ezra's unique connection with the animals, as we've seen, he was able to kind of make that psychic connection with them, sort of like Ahsoka also has shown to have special connections with animals as well. So I was surprised we didn't see any of that going on there. But given that the ruins that Balin's skull is hanging out at you could tell they're cheating because they're using like a hologram, but the way the stones are carved, the idea is that when the proper constellation was in the sky, whoever built that, the primitive people who used to live there, because it would be able to see the galaxy and the X themselves. And so I think the Purgle, being the ones who chart the hyperspace lanes, were probably whoever built those little monoliths there probably saw the Purgle leaving those planets and heading off in those directions, and that's what probably inspired them to build those monoliths as a way to do their own type of star chart. And as we learned earlier, the map in particular, it's not so much a map, it's just the orb simply has a point in space pointed in it that you have to link with this map. It was created by the Dathomir witches apparently, so their magic being a bit ill-defined, maybe that has some connection with the Purgle as well. We don't really know, because they've never really explained like how the Purgle are able to jump to light speed. Is that because of some force power or something like Dathomir witch type magic power? Like, we don't really know. So I think maybe that's why they were there, is because they probably because they have to live somewhere, not just flying around in space, because they have to have, something for sustenance. So maybe they were on that planet when whatever native peoples used to be there had built those, monoliths for that star chart.
Yeah, and those are so many good points. I'm just, seeing them hang out there, and I'm thinking to myself, why can't they just use them to travel? But I guess, perhaps they're in tune with the Force as well, and it's not the will of the Force for them to be used in this particular manner, or for any of these Force users to communicate with the Purgles and say, hey, can you please take me here?
Ezra did that at the end of Rebels Season 4. He was able to communicate with them, and it was precisely because he saved the same group of Purgle earlier in the series that they came and repaid the favor by coming to him, and which begs the question, Ezra might have been, I don't know if Ezra asked them, where should we go? And then they led the way, or if he had an idea of where he was going. So all these fascinating questions are still lingering. And given that we're already halfway through the season, it's like, wow, I wonder if they're going to get to answering any of these soon.
Absolutely. And of course, the episode kind of ends with Balin saying, the Jedis have taken refuge in the forest. Like, he has such a fantastic voice and presence, Ray Stevenson, as this Balin character. And it's just absolutely amazing. These HK droids are sent to delay the Jedi because even Elspeth knows that an encounter with them is, just fate. And this will only delay them for a little amount of time. But it was wonderful to see them fighting against the droids. And of course, we saw even Huang, I'm saying his name correctly, have this kind of confrontation. But I haven't really seen too many droids fight like that, but it did feel, it was kind of like, I kind of always make a joke whenever I see droids fighting. I'm like, my programming is better than your programming, or my design is better than. Yeah, Rock'em Sock'em robots, battle droids.
I like also when the droid shows up, he could have shouted for help immediately, but he waits until the other droid's covering. I'm like, you're covering his mouth, so I guess that's where the speaker is, so they can't hear him as much.
It is amazing. And someone had said real steel, like it was cool. It looked, the funny thing about it is that it looked cool. And we're starting to see things in this series that is kind of like, wow, that's really cool looking. I'd love to see something like that. I wasn't expecting him to do it. As I heard another friend say that he has hands, he does. And of course, he's an ancient droid, if that makes any sense. Certainly amazing what we saw there with him doing that. And of course, there was some doubt. I think Sabine had said, oh, he messed up something. And Ahsoka's like, nah, I don't think so. No.
He knows that than they do.
And I think hearing Ahsoka and Sabine talk about what the repercussions are in their choices and how Ahsoka is telling her, well, something, this may not turn out the way you want. And I think it's interesting how Sabine cannot anticipate the worst case scenario. Like, for example, when she developed that weapon that broke down Beskar armor, she couldn't imagine the worst case scenario of what that would mean to, let's say, her and all of her people, or the effect it would have on the economy to make something that would be so profound. And, she kind of finds herself at a cross, this fork in the road again, where I think she's already knows what she's going to do. Does she know what she's going to do before they even step in the situation? If she has to make the decision, Catherine, what do you think?
This is the thing I was wondering about. It's like the optimist in me wants to believe that she pulled like an old switcheroo off camera or something, rather than giving him the real map, or maybe she sabotaged it in some way. But the way she's acting in that scene when Baylan is coaxing her to just give him the map back, she seems to be genuinely taken in by what he's saying. And given the way the episodes have been written up to this point, with her being, really stubborn and face off with Ahsoka and blah, 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 it feels like they're just writing her in a way that's, inconsistent with the Rebel series for the sake of giving her a character arc. Because, even though her character's already mature enough to not be making these types of mistakes or jeopardizing everything in the way, like Ahsoka says, you realize that your desire to get back with Ezra could come at the expense of Thrawn coming back. She's like, of course I know that. And she does know that from the Rebel series and all that. So I think the way they're writing her to just be a bit flippant and throwing things by the wayside is because they just want to give her that arc of somebody who's going to start out kind of shaky apprentice, who's going to make mistakes and then mature and learn from the error, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, that seems to be the way they're writing it since we're halfway through the series now. But again, that's not really consistent with her character from Rebels, which is why, given that Filoni wrote this series and he knows these characters better than anybody else, that makes me think that the optimist in me wants to think that, no, she must know something or be doing something else. Otherwise, this is just really out of character. Because again, if Ahsoka truly doubts that Sabine can be trusted, I don't think she would have left Sabine in that situation, much less run into it. But again, they were expecting reinforcements that didn't show up. So,
yeah, and I also think, and so obviously without the reinforcements, the worst case scenario is presented and a decision has to be made. But we are learning, let's say, I'm not going to say her greatest concern about Sabine. And I mean, what were you thinking when she had to even ask the question about whether she could count on her? I mean, could you actually be at a stressful situation, at a confrontational situation, at a point where war may begin, and you have to ask whether you can count on the person who's supposed to be fighting by your side?
Again, this is because both of those characters, Ahsoka and Sabine, are already well-rounded, matured characters at the end of Rebels, and they probably, either Filoni or somebody else at Lucasfilm or whatever, thought that's not going to be dramatically interesting for a series like this if your two leads are, totally firm and committed and mature and all that kind of stuff. Like, we need to have an arc and we need to have friction between the characters to elevate the drama, and that kind of feels like what's going on here. Because you're right, it's ridiculous. Ahsoka shouldn't have to ask that of Sabine or even be questioning that at this point. But here we are.
Well, after the discussion and the droid situation that they overcome, we see Ahsoka and Sabine, and they have this incredible run through the forest. What
Love that.
Isn't it? Doesn't it look great? I mean, I thought that it was really a very special moment. Clearly, it's inspired by many classic films that we know, but boy, it really does kind of capture this sense of I don't know, maybe joy and wonder of them going to a fight and maybe knowing what they're up against and having the confidence that they can stop sort of the bad thing from happening that they don't want to happen. And I like that scene. I thought it was filmed pretty very, very well. Seeing Sabine keep up with Ahsoka, and I imagine it must be very difficult to keep up with Ahsoka. You can't just run behind her, like that doesn't work. But perhaps Sabine knows what to do. And of course, the together comment was made about them sticking together. And incidentally, at the same time, and as I mentioned before, Hera is making her way towards them. But why did she take her son to a gunfight?
That's a good question. Maybe she just trusts him or doesn't think anything bad's going to happen, or because it's true, he probably would be better off just staying behind with the fleet. And because they just want to have the two characters having screen time together from a fourth wall breaking perspective. It's like, yeah, would she bring him on this if she really needed to? Probably not. But we kind of want them there, or maybe he's kind of become more of a right hand on the Ghost, perhaps. My question was, why isn't Zeb there? Because we saw from, what is it, third season of Mandalorian, was it, that he's in Carson Teva's group? Yes. So Carson Teva we saw was there, and we saw a cameo from Brendan Wood, the other guy who plays one of the Din Djarin on the Mandalorian a lot, but we didn't see Zeb, and I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting, because I'm sure given what the mission is, Hera would love to take Zeb along, and Zeb would love to come along if he could. But no, so, okay.
Yeah, it's a huge tease and implication that he'll be around. So to not see him now, but they may surprise us. I mean, they like to keep secrets. And if that's the case, I'm fine with it. And, there is this disdain that Balin has for Elsbeth. I mean, he's almost looking at her like she's this weird witch, he has no real, I don't even know how to say it, but it feels like he doesn't trust her and thinks that she's kind of odd and weird, and even refers to her ability to use the Force in different ways as witchcraft.
I should have mentioned that when I did a watch along in the Star Wars group last night. That's right, because that's probably what the mystery guy in the mask with the double-bladed saber, Ahsoka kills him in the forest using the same move that Kenobi used on Darth Maul. And when he dies, we see that he's just this green mist, which is what we saw the Dathomir witches use for their magic in Clone Wars a lot. And now that we've learned that Elsbeth is a witch, and they can use the Force in different ways that the Sith don't even understand, which is something else we saw in Clone Wars, that might be why Balin kind of resents her, because it's like, officially she's just the head of that corporation which built all the Star Destroyers, but now that doesn't really have any relevance. So the only thing she could really be providing either is witchcraft, or maybe she has a secret been secretly stashing Star Destroyers somewhere, like all the ones on Exegol. So because the thing is, if you find Thrawn, okay, but what's he going to do if you don't have like a whole military arm to give him, you know? So that's other questions. Like, they seem to think he's still alive, and they seem to know more information than we do. But the fact that Baylan, you know, he keeps talking about honor, and you're right, he doesn't really like her very much. He doesn't trust her because of her force powers. But he's shown to have his own honor code as well when he doesn't kill Sabine and stops Shin from doing so, because it's like, no, I'm a man of my word, and I'm keeping my promises.
Yeah, it's he is someone who, and I'm not going to say that they can go toe to toe, but he does feel like he can challenge Elsbeth, I think. And in that sense, maybe he resents that she is the one perhaps telling him what to do in a lot of cases. And he kind of pushes back, like when he says, well, she's another force user, and it would be a shame if she was killed. And I thought to myself, I think that he is resisting Elsbeth's influence a little bit, but also the notion of, getting rid of somebody when maybe he doesn't have to, or he feels it's unnecessary. She's not a challenge. But that's not the Sith way, is it, Catherine?
Well, he's not a Sith.
I mean, I'm sorry, Dark Force user way?
Well, I mean, and he's not necessarily a Dark Force user either. We don't really know what like, yeah, he has a red lightsaber, but we don't really know what motivates him exactly. He does, like you said, he doesn't like Elsbeth. He has a code of honor which he's following, and again, it speaks to the fact that these group of villains know something about Thrawn and his situation that we don't. And like he says, he believes he's bringing some new order, some type of justice. So I would hope that we learn more about it, either through flashbacks or whenever we find out where they're going to when they make that hyperspace jump. We'll find out, like, what have they known? Like, what is Baylan after versus... We know what Elsbeth is after. She wants, restore Thrawn, all this kind of stuff, and to gain her influence back in the galaxy. But what is he after? We're not really sure yet. So, and I wonder if he's going to have a different arc maybe as well, because like you said, he's shown to be not prone to ultra violence, just because. If he can avoid it, he will. Like when Ahsoka draws her saber at him, he kind of rolls his eyes. He's like, oh, it's inevitable, I guess, and ignites the saber for another fight.
Yeah, certainly. And, we do get this wonderful rematch between Hadi and Sabine. And this time Sabine is obviously more prepared. I mean, you and I have discussed this. The Mandalorian's way of fighting has supposedly been tailor-made to defeat Jedi. And now we kind of get a little taste of it. We're not necessarily getting full on. I feel that Sabine feels like she can kill Hadi, but she feels that she can fight against her more effectively. And we see that in her confidence, although she kind of loses her helmet, which is an indication that, she couldn't keep her helmet on. She is struggling a little bit. But I love when Hadi tells Sabine, you have no power. And, she comes back at her, and I don't know what it's called. Like, it's on her arm and she can shoot. And, and as I said, she's not in Boba Fett level. She's not a Bo-Katan level either, but she's growing as a Mandalorian, and she needs to actually fight against more Force users using these tools to go ahead and get that experience, so that when she is going to go ahead and have a fight, she can have that confidence, and she does fight back. And I think, seeing that flinch, what did you think about Hadi's assumption that she knew exactly what she was up against when fighting Sabine the second time around?
Well, I take it she knows who Sabine is. Like, even Baylan Skoll mentions that, your entire family was killed on Mandalore, and so he knows her history, so he knows that she wasn't trained as a Jedi and never really took to the Darksaber as much either. So it implies that he's in the know, and he presumably has told Hadi that as well. So she's just kind of taunting her about it, thinking, and it is overconfident because she already beat Sabine once. It's like, this is going to be easy, the second time, and then it's not. So I think they do know a bit more about her. Which, again, speaks to why do these characters know about them, and what have they been up to, because we got a sense in the first episode what Sabine had been doing between Rebels and now. She was just hanging out, doing, listening to music, being a rebel rouser type on the fall, basically not doing anything.
Yeah.
So, we're not exactly sure what Ahsoka was doing during the timeline of the original trilogy or where she was. And now and same with Balin's Skrull, because Elsbeth was only recently broken out of jail. So where exactly has Balin been? Is he just a mercenary? How did he find out about Elsbeth's mission to go find Thrawn? I know Ahsoka's been kind of putting out feelers. Did he find out that way? So a lot of questions.
Yeah, there are a lot of questions, and certainly, we also, at the same time, while let's say Hadi's fighting Sabine, we also get this beautiful confrontation between Ahsoka and Balin, and it's just extraordinary, Catherine, because there's smack talk. There's Jedi smack talk, and I wondered for a second, and I know they can sense each other's feelings and things like that, but I also wondered about Balin and this sense of confidence that he has in this entire scenario, Catherine. He's going up against Ahsoka in the fight, and it's beautifully staged. He almost, there's even some points where he's almost smacking her with his lightsaber. He holds it like a long sword. He's like almost, it's almost like, and Ahsoka's doing everything in her power to grab the Wayfinder and get control of the situation. And I wondered if he has a similar ability to Mace Windu, who could sense a person's more or less weakness, if you will, while he's fighting them. And I hope I'm kind of phrasing this correctly, because he seems to know exactly what buttons to push on a Force user he's fighting with. And not everybody can do that. I think that Force users have certain abilities, and maybe he has it, or maybe it's even just his experience in knowing what's going on. But what do you think? Does he have any other special abilities or strengths as a Force user, other than just being a fantastic fighter, which he clearly is, being able to kind of crack his opponent when it comes to knowing what's important to them, and then shattering their confidence by exposing something very intimate to them?
I think it's simply because he knows she was Anakin's apprentice, and he knows what that means. He taunts her with that, so he knows what kind of to expect from her. Because he's trying to blame, oh, you abandoned him, and blah blah blah, and she's trying to, oh, he never mentioned you, and he's kind of like needling her with that. And because he knows Anakin, and virtually every Jedi knew Anakin, and the fact that he knows Anakin became Darth Vader is another clue that he's again really in the know about these things. So I think he assumes that, well, if I know Anakin and his fighting style, it stands to reason his apprentice is going to be similar. So he's clued that into what he's doing. Sort of like an Inquisitor. I mean, at first I thought maybe he may have been a former one, because that's kind of what Inquisitors do too. They can gauge from how the opponent fights and how they speak and stuff what their level of expertise is. And clearly, again, Balin, also because Balin Skrull knows that Sabine was really close with Ezra. It's like, how does he know that? It's like, again, there's more. They've been briefed on this by somebody. I mean, Elsbeth might have known some of that because she was in the know about what was going on with Thrawn at the time of Rebels. But it's like, why does he know that the extent of Ezra and Sabine's relationship? Why does he know? So it goes back to that, and questions that'll probably not be answered, because the latest seasons of Star Wars have kind of done that. Not really. And like, we still don't know why in the first season of Mandalorian, in the very first episode, why is Grogu at that compound with all these bounty hunters just kind of there? It's like, we never found out, and they'll never tell us. But it's like, it's just the villains just kind of know all this information, and he's using it to his effect, and he's confident that he was going to win that fight. And I think that's a lot to do with it.
He really was confident. And Catherine, I haven't seen anybody be that confident against Ahsoka except for Darth Vader. That I haven't seen anybody have that attitude. I think Elsbeth lost that fight with Ahsoka on purpose because she didn't want to get beat up and hurt. And she also didn't want to divulge too much of what she had planned all along. I think, as I had mentioned to you, that she was running the show behind bars, yellow is the new black, that whole thing. She knew she was going to have the prison break. She knew that she would be here at this point, and that, they would get to go to, let's say, where Thrawn is, and it is interesting how Balin also doubts Elspeth's ability and confidence that this it is an ancient Darth Vader artifact, isn't it, Catherine?
Yep.
And he's very skeptical. He's like, if you mess this up, we'll end up like in nowhere land, and we'll never like be able to get back to civilization. And Elspeth is kind of like, Don't you worry. I think that is also very unsettling to him, as from his point of view, he wants something more concrete that gives him a guarantee of where he's going to be, and kind of staking it on this technology that he finds witchcrafty, or whatever he describes it as.
That's the thing, is he doesn't know about it, and that's why he's uneasy about it. Whereas she's confident because she knows how to work it, because she's a witch, and it's witchcraft type magic.
Yeah, it really is. And so it is wonderful to see. First of all, I think that it was genius to have a situation where, Ahsoka is busting her butt to try and get this wayfinder, and she hurts her hand when she grabs it, and she's willing to risk it all. Honestly, I think that if it meant that she was going to die, she would have. If she had to die in order to prevent the wayfinder final coordinates being transmitted to Elspeth, she would have done that. But it was wonderful to see Boylan, do all sorts of. We saw some very pivotal force pushes, because he pushes her and she flies around. Like it's like boom, and she's flying, and you see Ahsoka like head over heels over her head, kind of off balance, and then she gets up, and then he does something else, and it was just so much fun to see him kind of. It was almost like he was, a grown, like he was. It was just he really. I don't think she was holding back, but I think he was holding back. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. He was handling her with kid gloves, and she wasn't. So I'm even thinking, how powerful is Balin if we're just seeing just a glimpse of his power, and a very controlled, a very calculated manner that he's doing it. It's so smooth, Catherine. It's so
or he could simply just be a better fighter than Ahsoka. I mean, okay, she's good, but not like over the like we saw in Clone Wars season 7. Darth Maul was toying with her because he wanted her to join him. If he wanted to kill her, he would have done it like that, because he's that good. But so I think it's just that also part of it is that Balin's confident and he's good, and he knows that she's again Anakin's apprentice, and that's why he won the fight. He knows what to expect, like an Inquisitor in a way.
Yeah, and of course it leads to this climactic moment. And am I correct in saying you did say that this is very uncharacteristic of Sabine to make this decision? What I found fascinating by it was that I had kind of joked around of how I thought that Balin was a great master. He's very stern. You can't pull anything over him. And I don't see him as the kind of master that you could make a mistake and he would be forgiving. I think he would just say, well, our relationship is over and we're done. And you would never hear from him again. But he seems to be incredibly disciplined. And I kind of like that structure about him. And it is, it's so satisfying to see Sabine, hand over the Wayfinder, guys. So sorry for the spoilers, but she does this. And he's very seductive in the manner that he talks to her. He's telling her exactly what she wants to hear. But we know when you make deals sometimes with people, the outcome is not exactly what you were hoping for. But I loved seeing her do this, because I think her motivation is because she's in love with Ezra. Do you think that she's in love with him, or are they just brother and sister? What do you think, Catherine?
I don't know what the nature of a relationship is, but if she doesn't have a plan and is just gifting that to them, then she's not very disciplined, which again is not consistent with the way it was shown in Rebels. So him being able to just talk, like it was obvious what he was trying to do, and yet she just totally caves in, which is why I wanted to believe that maybe she did something different with the map, but well, again, she couldn't have done something different with the map, otherwise we wouldn't see Thrawn in this series, if we eventually will. So she just kind of caved in.
She really did. And I don't know whether or not she felt that if she had the map, she could go there on her own. I mean, why did she not think that she could maybe even work out something with the Purgles? I mean, I know this sounds crazy, but they did see her, and she said that she had an emotional reaction to them. And I think that the Purgles made their presence to her for a reason.
Well, the other thing she could have done is instead of holding the blaster to the map saying, let Ahsoka go, she could have just shot Balin and held the gun towards his head and said, let her go, or just shot him right there, But she didn't do either because she's not that cold-blooded, and she's not, she doesn't know how to talk to the Purgle or anything like that. Plus, the Purgle, again, only helped Ezra because he helped them first. And which is why people aren't going to be able to, tame them and use them to, hyper travel on this hyperspace travel on their own. So, yeah, she just kind of gave in, and he didn't have to work very hard to get her to give in.
No, he didn't. And I think that's why, because she was so easily swayed, that I think she had already made up her mind before they even got there, that if given that choice, she already knew what she was going to do. So, I know it was bad, but it kind of felt good for somebody to take a chance and do something reckless. But she has not exactly been the smoothest character, let's say, in her own life. So, and I think that she wanted to take this chance. And I almost wondered whether or not, oh, great, is she a double agent? Is she doing this on purpose? She has some master plan when she gets there or something. But I don't believe that's the case. I think she's stepped into the lion's den and, she's become friends with the lions. But, she's still a cub, and this is going to be a bumpy road for her. And when she comes out at the end of this, I don't think she's going to be recognizable. That's what I think is going to happen to Sabine. What do you think, Catherine?
Maybe. Because, again, it's interesting since they're regressing the character a bit for this arc. Will it have a happy ending or not? And hopefully it's not going to be a to-be-continued thing. I have a feeling it might be, because even though we're halfway through the season, they haven't really done much in terms of stuff happening for there to be already 4 episodes in. So we'll see where that goes. I'm just more curious at this point as to what Ezra and Thrawn have been up to for the last 10 years or so in the time.
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to say about Elspeth is that she reminds me of Ursula from The Little Mermaid, because as she's, looking down on the planet, knowing that, what's going on, because I honestly believe that she knows, she can sense what's going on the surface of the planet, that she's kind of knowing, poor Sabine, you poor unfortunate soul, go ahead and take a chance, give us the orb, and you can go, and it's going to be,
But she didn't really try and act sympathetic to her when she got up there. Like, again, like you mentioned earlier, Balin had the reason why he didn't kill her, because she certainly didn't seem to care. She's like, oh, I got what I want, here we go.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess I don't think that Balin is keeping her alive as a matter of honor. I think he can use her against Ahsoka in the future. I think that's how that may be played out. But I think, I'm sorry.
Did he think that Ahsoka lived when he threw her off the cliff, though?
Well, let's talk about that. I don't believe he thought she was dead. Did you think she died from that fall?
Well, no, because it's Dave Filoni. He's not going to kill Ahsoka.
And so, with that being said, of course, we saw the platforms, the long platforms, which people have confirmed she is in the world between worlds, right, Catherine?
Yeah.
And of course, we see a figure that, we all know. We see Anakin Skywalker there, and it's funny because they show Ahsoka kind of upside down, right? He chose to invert her posture. And it was, yes, Tom Jr. Jackson, she ended up in the world between worlds. And we were left with a cliffhanger at the end of this episode. Catherine, I don't know what's going on. Any clue?
Yeah, it can't be Anakin. Because here's the thing. Anakin, what motivated him throughout episode 3 was his desire to save Padme. He was going to do anything to save her. And as we saw after he killed the Separatist Council on Mustafar, he's like standing on the balcony crying because he knows he's done bad things, irredeemable things, but he's doing it because he's selfishly trying to protect this one thing that he wants. If he knew that he could access the world between worlds is a place that he could access, because in Rebels we saw Palpatine had to exert a lot of resources just to be able to find it, and was very disappointed when he lost access to it. But if Anakin has somehow now managed to find it, and it's clearly a younger version of Anakin, like a pre-Episode 3 version of Anakin, if he's found this, then he would most certainly try and use it to go back in time and change things. Like, go back even further to save his mom, even, the things that motivated him. And I'm having a hard time believing that if this Anakin has somehow found his way in the world between worlds, that because you got to write within the parameters of what has already been established. In the original trilogy, they obviously didn't think of the world between worlds yet. But since the original trilogy chronologically predates this show, we know that, well, if Vader knew that this place existed, he would have been devoting every resources he could to get it unlocked and go back to it. Like we saw in Empire Strikes Back, his whole motivation through that whole movie was to get Luke, because he knew Luke was his son, and he wanted to tell, hey, the Emperor fears you, and we are going to take power ourselves, which is the same thing he told Padme in Revenge of the Sith on Mustafar before he nearly killed her. So if this is really Anakin, I don't see how he would just be in the world between. We're talking to Ahsoka. It's like, no, you're going to be trying to get back to the things that you lost and loved, and that would stick with you forever. You would continually never give up the fight to try and find that again. And you do actually hear Vader's theme music play at the end of the episode, which makes me think that, I don't know who you are, but you are not Anakin Skywalker. I'm thinking there's something else. Because plus you then have the inevitable conversation that would pop up where Ahsoka's going to ask him, like, hey, what the hell? Yeah, after everything he did. So I'm thinking there's something afoot here, maybe witchcraft again, because like we're saying, the villains know more than we do about whatever's going on with Thrawn. So I'm thinking there's something shaky going on here, because clearly there was no portal there on that planet. Somebody had to pull her through, similar to how Ezra saved her at the end of season 2 by pulling her, through the portal on Malachor. So I'm thinking this isn't Anakin. This doesn't make sense to me that he, at that point in his life, would find this place, know it's there, and just go back to being, like the transformation he has in Episode 3 would not happen if he knew that the world between worlds was out there and he could access it that way. And clearly in Episode 3, he had no idea there was any such place that he could go back and change things as well as he did. So I'm calling BS on this. I don't think it's Anakin. I think it's something fishy is going on here.
Yeah, and like I said, we found when she went into this, let's say if it is the world between worlds, or if she's dreaming, or whatever it is, they showed her upside down. And I wonder if that's a clue, Catherine. Why would we see her upside down?
Was she upside down, or did the camera just looking down at her and just shift around?
Yeah, maybe. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, it looked like she was upside down. Maybe it was just.
I remember they did the transition where the camera's like panning over the water, and then you just gradually start seeing it there. And maybe the idea is almost like, figuratively speaking, is like she died or something, even though she's not dead. Because we're not sure. The only thing we know about how to get in there is there has to be an official door portal, which she clearly didn't pass through, or somebody's got to pull you in there. So, yeah, maybe. We'll see, though.
And my other, somewhat interesting question, or somewhat interesting thought about it is, obviously Ezra, Ahsoka, and the Emperor are the only persons I remember, and her bird are the only ones I've ever seen in the world between worlds, like, let's say in the series. But I can't remember if when Ezra was in the world between worlds, whether he saw other windows and what he saw, like in.
Yeah, so it was interesting because they showed portals where you saw live action clips from the other movies playing, even though it was an animated show, showing these different segments of the Skywalker saga, and like the Geonosian arena, and I think they showed a bit from Empire with the I Am Your Father type of. So they were showing stuff like this. So Ezra's been in there, Ahsoka's been in there, and we know she has the spirit of the daughter from Mortis within her. And then Palpatine almost got in there, but he didn't.
Yeah, that was scary, that part where he kind of appears and they're running for their lives. And that was the scariest moment for me in that whole episode.
And Vader would have seen her get pulled through the portal when they had their fight on Malachor, even though he didn't ever reach in and would have no idea, like, what the hell was that, kind of thing. And he might have learned about it from Palpatine once season 4 of Rebels comes along, but again, he doesn't have a way to get back there. Whereas the Anakin that we saw was clearly before he turns into Darth Vader. So there's something fishy going on here. And I think you might be right. It could be a manifestation of something else. Like, is it because again, when the Mortis gods died, the daughter and the son, it's like, well, the daughter got infused into Ahsoka. When the son died, did his spirit just kind of take off into the ether and end up somewhere? Like, is that maybe another manifestation of the son or something, trying to get to her, manipulate her again, perhaps?
Yeah, and did Balin push her into the world between worlds somehow? They're on a planet of the Night Sisters, right, Catherine? It's the Night Sisters planet, and Balin is noticing some very unusual things he's seeing there. We know he force pushed, or however, Ahsoka was tossed off, but because the location of where they were, this platform, was very special. Like it could be some kind of temple that they're on top of, or some other thing that we can't see. She's already seen that. We saw those images, right, Catherine, in the first episode when Ahsoka was at that location, and she saw different scenes. I wonder if one of those gives us a clue as to what's happened, and also the credits and stuff, because I haven't looked at
the things she saw and what all the credits is referring to. I think is that temple at the end of the episode where they put the orb to open up the map, like this ancient, like I was saying, that ancient star chart to look at the constellations or whatever. And we saw something similar in Clone Wars when in season 6, the 2 episodes where Jar Jar Binks and Mace Windu team up to uncover this mystery, and they find out about that Mother Talzin is up to something, and she's at a similar, almost Stonehenge like series of monoliths trying to conjure her powers again and do so. So it's kind of like that. There didn't seem to be a portal to the world between worlds there, but Balin also looked really confident when he knocked Ahsoka off the cliff, almost like he knew it was going to happen. So maybe it is a trick.
Yeah, it is quite a mystery trying to figure this out, and they didn't really give us much to go on, except for the look on Anakin's face. Okay, let's say this figure that appears to be Anakin, he doesn't look angry.
Like I mentioned, he's a younger, he has the scar on his eye from that Ventress gave him prior to episode 3. So it's right around that time period. And there's, as far as we know, the world between worlds doesn't allow you to change how you look. So that means he's from that time. So again, I think it's some type of trick. No, I'm not sure exactly what it means though. Mm-hmm. Because that would just cause a lot of problems. Kind of like in Clone Wars Season 7, they kind of shot themselves in the foot a bit when they mentioned that Anakin and Obi-Wan knew about what was going on in Mandalore right before they had to go save Palpatine. And because they really wanted to help Ahsoka, but they're like, well, we can't. We have to save the Chancellor. It's like, well, if you're going to write that in there, then after they save the Chancellor, they're not going to sit around joking around on the platform after they return him to the Council. They're going to be taking off to go save Ahsoka and helping her out. But they didn't do that, which is why you can't really write some of those things that way. It kind of messes with stuff. But this, to me, would be a big departure because, again, as far as we could tell, Vader didn't find out about any inkling that something like this existed until the end of Rebels Season 2 when Ahsoka got pulled through that portal. And there's even no proof that Vader even knew what happened to her. It's like, what the hell was that, But the idea that if he had access to it at this point, he probably would have most certainly used it for himself to change the past and to change things rather than be here like talking to and again playing the Vader music when because you see that Ahsoka even has like a really clear reaction to it, like, oh my god, Anakin, and yet they're playing the Vader music as if to hint that no, this is cautionary, this is a trick, like the evil the evil queen in Snow White. It's like, oh, I'm just a harmless soul. Like, no, there's something going on here,
Well, it's interesting because I know that when Ahsoka woke up that morning, having her coffee, she didn't think her day was going to go down like this, Catherine. It certainly was a shock to her. And when they were, I know you said she has the sister in her, when they were in that experience, they don't have a memory of that, right, Catherine? They don't remember anything from that.
I don't recall if that's the case. They remember being in the world between worlds, don't they?
I mean, not the world between worlds, but when they I'm having difficulty describing this. When they meet the father and the son and the daughter.
They remembered what happened. It's just that according to everybody else who wasn't there, they disappeared from the space-time continuum because they were only off the radar for a second. But they remembered what happened. They just chose not to tell Yoda and the council about it for whatever reason, which I guess because reasons, which it didn't really make sense as to why. Because, they never said that they forgot what happened there. They were a bit confused at the end of the Mortis arc as to why, like, what are you talking about, Cody? We've been gone for days. It's like, no, you were only gone for like a second. And they kind of looked at each other like they were like, what the heck was that? And it's almost like they decided it would be better to just, keep it to themselves.
Okay.
I don't think there was indication they forgot. Because even the father on Mortis had to, when he found out that the son showed Anakin his future, he purged that memory from his head because he knew that, no, you're not going to make the right decisions because you're going to remember when you leave.
So that's what was erased.
The only thing that was erased was when the son showed Anakin all the horrible things he's going to do as Darth Vader, and that he becomes Darth Vader, and the father found out about that. But the father only purged that vision of the future. He didn't purge, everything else, that their whole experience there on Mortis.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And, for some reason I thought that the entire occurrence was something, like they wake up on the ship and they're like, they don't remember what had happened. But it is very interesting to see what's going on. But one kind of interesting thing about the ending is that that's not really what necessarily hooked me on wanting to see the next episode. And while it is intriguing to see who's in this, what looks to be the world between worlds with Ahsoka, that move by Sabine is what kind of is making me want to see the next episode and see what happens. And I'm eager to see Thrawn, as I think everybody. Now we're in episode 4. We're well into this, and the next thing I hope we see will be that. But the next episode might be this World Between Worlds episode. What do you think, Catherine?
Well, I actually really like the ending when when Hera and the team show up, and then they just use the hyperspace ring. We're like, just go through them. And I didn't think anything was going to happen because it's just a ring. They're going to fly between them, and it seemed to act almost like an EMP and knock out all of their, electronics and cause some of the X-wings to blow up. I'm like, man, that was kind of rad. But it's also like, I'm wondering, did they build the hyperspace ring simply because they needed it to travel, or did they need it to bring something back as well? Because that's a big hyperspace ring. And they were talking about how powerful the hyperdrive was going to have to be to get them there. But again, I assume they want to come back. But that's it. And the 5th episode, as we know, is the one that's going to be theatrically screened at 10 fan events around the country, which indicates that it's going to be probably a really big episode. I guess this is where we're going to see Ezra and Thrawn, and we're going to see Anakin in the World Between Worlds. So we'll probably get a lot more of that, and I'm expecting it'll probably be a longer episode, simply because if you're going to screen it in theaters, you got to make an event out of it, right?
Yeah. To be honest with you, Catherine, I haven't been this excited about an episode. I don't know why I'm echoing. I haven't been this excited about an episode in ages upcoming. And when they announced on StarWars.com that they were going to be premiering episode 5 in movie theaters across the country, and they called it a fan mid-season event, and I thought to myself, oh my God, what is, got so excited from this. Only 10 theaters in the country. It's not very many, but some people were upset. And I know this sounds crazy, or maybe not so crazy, but the poster that they used to advertise it, which came out maybe the day after episode 4 came out, or the day of, had a picture of Anakin, and some people hadn't seen that episode yet. And so a lot of people were saying, oh man, I didn't know we were going to see him at the end of that episode. I haven't even seen it. Oh my gosh. So a lot of people had a different reaction to it. But between you and I, it's only in one theater in New York, of what's supposed to be the busiest theater in the United States. And I thought to myself, this is not enough theaters. But I guess because I don't know how they organize this, but
I'm guessing that because it's a fan event that they're going to give out stuff, and that maybe that's why it's limited. Because if they think it's going to make money, which apparently they sold out very quickly, then if they're not going to give out any goodies or anything like that, then given how much it's sold out, why not expand? They still have time, and if they could show any theater like, hey, look how quickly this sold out, can you get us an extra screen for us or something? And they could probably make it work, but they're not doing that. The one nearest to me is in San Francisco, which is like 130 miles from here, so no thanks. But I think it was already sold out by the time I heard about it anyway. So yeah, we'll see. We'll definitely hear from people who attend the Fandom. When is it? Is it the same time the episode drops for everybody else?
I didn't click on it to see what it was, so I'm not sure. Maybe somebody in the chat knows.
That's right. I think it's. Oh, I remember now. Yeah, it's only like a few minutes ahead, so it should be around roughly the same time.
Yeah, honestly, Catherine, I think it's one of the best things that they're doing, and I'm so excited for every fan who has the opportunity to go and see this. I'm very, very happy for everyone who got it. Would I have liked to have gotten a ticket? Yes. Would I have liked you to have gotten a ticket? Yes, but we didn't, and it's okay. For those of you who are going to see it, you enjoy this thing. You just enjoy it, have fun. It's a very special event. And you know something, Catherine? If they were selling tickets to it, every theater, let's say every theater was going to show, that episode, I would have paid for a ticket, like let's say if my regular theater was showing it and it was like a nationwide event, a couple thousand screens, I would have paid for a ticket. Would you?
Yeah, if it was local. I mean, I wouldn't. Unless I was with friends and we were going to make a big thing out of it, I wouldn't go by myself on a road trip to San Francisco just for the episode. Yeah, it would have been fun if they had it, more wide release.
Yeah, and I think that the level of excitement from this episode, I found episodes 3 and 4, especially 4, incredibly exciting and fun to watch. And I think for me, it's the best episode of the series so far. And I know it had been kind of slow going, at least for me. I was waiting for that hook from the series, and they've hooked me now. Catherine, what did you feel like? How do you rate episodes 3 and 4? Do you think the series is improving or not? Like, what are your thoughts?
Well, other than the way they've been writing Sabine, I think for the most part it's been improving. It's keeping my level of intrigue, but again, much like with the first 2 episodes, it's like I just want them to answer the question that they posed when they ended Rebels like 5.5 years ago. Like, where's Ezra and Thrawn? What have they been doing this whole time? So it looks like we'll finally get that answer next week. And I take it they'll have both what's going on with Ezra and Thrawn and the World Between Worlds, because obviously it's going to be a big event episode, and probably not for the sake of cameos. I think it's going to, which is what I like about this series so far. They're not shoehorning in random characters for cameos. They're like, each character is there for a reason in this show, which is what I like, because it feels more organic, and that they're trusting the story more, which is good. So I do look forward to that. Next week we'll probably see Thrawn, and it'd be cool because they got the voice actor to play him, Lars Mikkelsen, which is really excellent. And we'll see Ezra perhaps, like for real in the flesh and not on a hologram. So, yeah, it'll be great.
Well, Catherine, there was so much to talk about with these 2 episodes, and so much excitement, just so much going on. I love the feel and the flow of the episodes. I love the smack talk. I loved, the battle droid scene. I liked the drama in this, and Elspeth smiling like Ursula as she knows everything's going to work out for her, was just so wonderful to see. And Catherine, thank you for joining me tonight for this review of the 2 episodes. Catherine, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and Letterboxd at Sly Snide. And you can find me co-hosting The Unifying Force, a Star Wars talk show on the Virtual Cantina Network YouTube channel every 2nd and 4th Sunday of the month at 8 a.m. Pacific. And we got a whole show playlisted there, so you can check what you want to see there. And you can also find me on the Phantasmagorium show. We've been on a little hiatus lately, but we got a lot of playlists of Tarantino movies we've reviewed, Batman movies, Spider-Man movies, James Bond, which is our flagship series, more or less. So, find me there.
Absolutely, guys. Please do check out Catherine on the Phantasmagorian show, as well as everything else that she's mentioned here. You can also reach out to Catherine either on Positive Fandom or the Burnettwork if you want to leave a message or a letter for her there as well. So please do that. guys, you can find me on Positive Fandom and the Burnettwork as well. I want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson. He's the Phantasmagorium YouTube channel, guys. So make sure you do check that and subscribe to that today if you can. I also want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson, my moderator, collaborator, and good friend, a huge part of the Burnettwork family here, guys. Also, like and subscribe to his channel as well. It is a fantastic channel with wonderful reviews. Thank you so much, Tom Jr. Jackson, for everything you do. We are all goof people. I want to thank everybody who showed up tonight. Thank you so much for the support. It's wonderful to hear your comments and chats. We didn't have enough time to look at everybody's comment tonight, but I do want to tell you all, thank you so much for listening to the discussion tonight. And it does make a difference in seeing all your opinions and thoughts about the show. Certainly, it has provoked a lot of discussion, and I think in the sense, I know some people may not have been as satisfied with the show, but I think there's been a lot of positive discussion coming out about this. I think it's a great time to be a Star Wars fan, everybody. I think we're going to be seeing wonderful things from the show going forward. Certainly, they want to do something for the fans because they're premiering the episode in the theater, Catherine, and that I think is very positive indeed for Star Wars fans. So, I think this was a plus, a big improvement and a big deal for this series. This Ahsoka series has gotten stronger with this episode, and let's keep this ball rolling. Let's see Thrawn. Let's see this Oscar performance we know we're going to see of Thrawn, because he is such a strong and powerful character. Between him and Baylan and Elspeth, we're going to be seeing just incredible performances, I think, going forward. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm reading here in the comments that apparently this theatrical premiere, the tickets were free.
Yes.
Which is okay. That's kind of surprising. Maybe it's more of a promotional thing then, because otherwise, they probably would charge money for it. And they're like, yeah, so it's an hour before. So, yeah, so that's cool. Yeah, surprising. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. And, of course, you and I are saying that even if it was a regular show at the theater, we would have paid. Like, if they must know that we would actually pay if they were saying the finale was going to be. I mean, I wonder if they're going to do the finale in a theater, Catherine. These are all questions that I think goes through everyone's mind. I would pay for that if they wanted to charge us for it. I think the feeling of sentiment and excitement I have for the series right now is so great that I would pay for it. And I think it's wonderful what they've done up to this point. And I want to thank you, Catherine, for joining me tonight. You and I were eating our dinner together. So this is why I have on there that it is dinner and a movie, because we were kind of still eating our dinner. But boy, what a fun review tonight, Catherine. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, everybody in the chat, for the support for the Burnettwork and for Positive Fandom and for Star Wars. And guys, remember,
great way to celebrate Star Trek Day.
Yeah, I know, right? Julian's in the chat here. Julian's like, "Oh, it's Star Trek Day. I'm sorry, Julian. I'll make it up to you, I promise." But guys, remember, no matter where you are in the galaxy, guys, always remember to please be kind. Take care, everybody.